What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. This is T Word, the People's Champ for the Mic Check podcast, and we are live to do a quick boxing reaction to Saturday night's action. We're not going to cover every single fight on both cards, but we're going to talk about Janabek. We're going to talk about Rolly, Kenneth Sims, as well as Francis Bartholomew. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We certainly appreciate the feedback from everybody. What you do to support our channel with the likes and the follows and the shares do a lot for the growth of this channel because it encourages us to continue to put out great content. So we appreciate the feedback. While you're here, don't forget to check out my guys at the Angry Man Podcast, AM Sports Media. They are wrapping up a 2-hour live show right now. So feel free to go pop over there, drop a like on the video, go ahead and subscribe. They're live every Sunday, and then our show follows right behind. So you get a few hours of really great content on weekends. We're all running early this week because it is Mother's Day. So this is going to be a really short check-in again. We're just going to go ahead and recap Saturday's action, and then we're going to get up out of here. We will get a live show where we talk about the NBA playoffs. We've had quite a bit of playoff action happen. League of Legacies, what's up, brother? Welcome to the show. I guess you just transitioned over from Angry Man. I know they're wrapping up with our favorite commenter or favorite calling guest that they have, Terrence Best Videos. You know, he over there spitting his foolishness. So, but I appreciate you popping over. Don't forget to hit that like button, fam. Everything you do, like I said, supports this channel. But again, we are going to be talking about the boxing. But until we get a little crowd in here, we can entertain some basketball. You know, in the first round, I slept on the Heat, but I feel like the Heat got something going on, man. It was surprising the way that they dispatched the Bucks in the first round, and now I'm a little surprised by what they're doing in the second round. So, you know, that team has figured it out. They've gotten hot at the right time, and you know, I'm a big football guy, and it's all about getting hot right before you get into the playoffs. And it seems like the Heat figured their strategy out. And something funny, and I'm gonna apply this to boxing as well. But I was watching Draymond Green this morning on his it's like the Draymond Green show, and he was talking about cracking the code. And he said every year in the playoffs, yeah, momentum is everything. He was talking about cracking the code of a team, especially in the series. He said once you crack the code, at some point in that series, you feel like you could beat that team. Like you know, even if it goes 6-7, whatever, you're gonna beat that team. Well, anyway, it seems like Miami has been cracking the code every time. And that's what's getting them through these playoffs. And then you factor in momentum, and that's a dangerous combination because you'll see a team like the 2007 Giants, the 2011 Giants, the Packers who went like 9-7 or whatever, and then ended up in the playoffs and won the Super Bowl after going on the road and all that stuff. Um, Momentum is what carries a team like that. Relative to boxing, when you talk about cracking the code, you've got 12 rounds. So you could picture a 12 round fight like a 12-game season, like a college football season. And game by game, you're starting to crack the code to what makes your team tick. In boxing, you're cracking the code of your opponent unto the point that it's like, okay, I figured out exactly what he's bringing to the table, and now I can strike. When you think about guys who are said to be slow starters, they have a little bit longer where they crack the code, but when they crack it, it's done. You think of Terrence Crawford, you think of sometimes Canelo Alvarez. I could say Triple G's that way to some degree. Vasil Lomachenko. Um, Somebody else you might consider a code cracker. Hmm, I feel like Haney's that way. He takes his time, you know, and I'm thinking of guys who often go the distance besides Crawford. Once Crawford cracked the code, it's over. Once Tank cracks it, it's over. But those guys slowly take their time to figure you out. I think to some degree, Errol Spence does this as well, but it's not the same. Alexander Usyk, I guess that's how you would say it. He's somebody who could crack the code and figure out exactly what his opponent is doing, and then once he gets there, you're not gonna find a way back into the fight. He'll just beat you by decision and be happy to go home champion. So I just thought that that was kind of an interesting way for him to explain it. And then I was able to get a practical application to other sports, and it makes sense. Football, you know, first 3 quarters of the game, you're getting your ass kicked. You can't figure out what they're doing. Then all of a sudden, you make a substitution, you run a play and it works. And then you realize it's been in front of you the entire time. And then you go back and apply that in other aspects of the game and it starts to work. And then momentum kicks in and then you're hard to stop. Um, we didn't see a whole bunch of that in the boxing on Saturday night. What we saw was some real basic average stuff. Nobody did anything to me that was super amazing. Even when you get an early stoppage, it doesn't feel that way. League of Legacy says takes a lot of awareness and honesty. That's facts. In order for you to crack it, you have to be honest with yourself and realize that something isn't working. And that's self-awareness. Self-awareness is honesty. I guess those are kind of the same concept. But if you can be self-aware, that means you can pull yourself to the side and say, what am I doing wrong right here? What it starts with me. How can I fix whatever it is that I'm doing that's putting me at a disadvantage? And then you build from there. Sometimes you don't have enough time. Like I think one of the shortest spans to try to figure something out is like a playoff football game because you just got that 60 minutes. But when you look at like a basketball series, you have more time. And boxing, I think to some degree you have that same amount of time. But because it's such a dangerous sport, I mean, one punch could change an entire fight. But I still feel like you have enough time. All right, let's go a little deeper on the topic, aware of what's going on and the thought process behind it. Oh, for sure. Definitely. I think that Draymond gets a bad rep. People don't really talk about how cerebral of a player he is. When coaches talk about Draymond, they talk about it. But the other players, they mostly talk about how tenacious of a defender he is, how tough of a competitor he is. They don't always talk about how how much he's into the X's and O's. Like you hear guys like LeBron get that. You know who don't get a lot of credit for that? Steph Curry. But I know Steph understands the X's and O's because he grew up in it, and then he's got a brother who also plays. So them conversations got to be off the chain crazy. But Draymond has that coach in him. I don't know if he has the temperament to be a coach immediately after he's done playing, and I know he's got that podcast going. But I think that he has what it takes because the way that he can understand and then break it down and explain it to a layman is pretty amazing. Like that simple thing, like, oh, we cracked the code, that type of thing. League says kind of like chess. The first thing you do is try to figure out the plan of your opponent's move. And see, I'm not a chess player. I understand the concept of chess, but I do understand that you have to be very conscious of the strategy and you have to be ahead on the moves. And I think that that's what happens in high level athletics. So we're 10 minutes into the show. Don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and share with your peers if you choose. And please be a subscriber. We do appreciate it. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the first fight card. I'm going to start with the top ranked card simply because, number one, I ain't going to lie. I kind of halfway watched it. I was a little bit more interested in the Showtime card. But we're going to start with the top ranked card. And we're going to talk about the card that had Janabek on it. His last name is Alunkanoli. That's crazy. Like to even try to say that in one swoop is crazy. But anyway, so on this card, you had one of the Vargas. You had Amado Vargas, and he didn't look his best. I mean, it was just one of them fights where it's a learning experience. He's probably the least talented of the Vargas kids. You have Brian Newman Jr. Welterweight. He's considered one of the better guys coming up in boxing. Remember, he got famous off of a sparring session with Bud Crawford. So he did his thing. Now, the main card on ESPN featured Jason Moloney and Vincent Astrolabio. Now, some of you may remember Astrolabio from maybe a few months ago. I believe it was a Showtime card, and he got a knockout win in that fight. And he was getting and giving equally up until the point where one big punch changed the fight, like we just talked about, and he ended up getting a knockout. So he got himself into the bantamweight title contention. Now, the bantamweight title was vacated by Noya Inoue because he was the champion, undisputed. And then in December, he dropped all the belts and moved up to super bantamweight so he could face Stephen Fulton for his two belts. So Moloney ends up a number one contender, Astrolabios a number two contender. So these guys have to fight for this vacant belt. And this fight was kind of back and forth. There's a little bit of action. At some points, it felt like Moloney didn't have what it took, and you were kind of waiting for that big shot from Astrolabio because he's a power puncher. The big shot never came. I never felt like Moloney was really in danger, and then eventually he did win a decision, and he becomes the WBO bantamweight champion. So this was his third title fight, if I'm not mistaken, and he finally won. All right, so next up on that card, we had Janabek Alamkanali against Stephen Butler. And this was for the WBO middleweight title that Janabek has. And he's been calling out Charlo and other champions at 160. I don't think he said the Damit's name yet. But anyway, this guy here he's a pretty good fighter, but I think against the elite fighters, his flaws are going to show up. So he beat the hell out of Stephen Butler. And this was an early victory for him, simply because he just had too many tools in the tool bag, and Stephen Butler was just a warm body to stand there and get beat up. I was on a live stream listening in, and I heard that what was the comment? Basically, Saturday night's card was just a paid advertisement for Haney Loma. So you don't want to go a week before the fight and not be able to put the commercials out advertising your big pay-per-view coming up. And the branding everywhere, everything led you to believe this card was all about making sure people knew Haney and Loma was coming up on May 20th. Good job, because at the beginning of every round, a little bell would ring and then a little graphic will pop up stating that Haney and Loma was next week. So Janabek got in there and I mean, he just beat on the guy early, and he caught him slipping. What started the downfall was he caught him slipping with an uppercut on the move, and it stunned his opponent, and then he just went in for the kill. Janabek's a hell of a finisher, and that he did. He knocked his opponent down 3 times in the round before the ref, Jack Reese, had enough, and they called it a day. So he is able to retain his 160-pound title and put his sights on somebody else. I personally think if he's trying to fight in like the next 3 months, I say put his ass in there with Jamal Charlo and make Charlo work. You know, he's been sitting on the belt for a couple years now. I get it. He's had personal issues or whatever. But I say put him in there with another dog and just see if the best dog comes out. Because one of two things going to happen. Either Jamal's going to show what he really is made of, and he's going to be a unified champion, WBC and WBO, or he's going to give up that belt to Janabek, who's proven that he's a better champion, and Jamal could start over, move up to 168, go chase Canelo, or whatever the case may be. In my opinion, it's really all about getting the best in the ring to fight the best and getting these belts to start moving and possibly get some better unifications. It's a lot easier to get 2 belt holders together for a fight than to get 4 separate belt holders to do some type of fight, because otherwise you got to start doing like champion tournaments or something. If anybody wants to join, feel free. Link is in the comments. I will pin it shortly, but I'm cooking on this right now. I want to talk about the 160-pound division before we move on to the Rolly Romero card. So Janabek against Charlo, to me, is a logical fight, and I think that it's important for Janabek to show that he's elite against an elite fighter, and it's important for Charlo to show that his time off has not diminished his skills. And if it has, again, we get the belts moving, and then he can rebuild and he can move up to 168, and he doesn't have the title holding him back. I think that that's also important, because as long as he's a champion, he can sit at 160 and he's justified. I'm a champion here. I can do what I want to do. But if he's to move up to 168, now he has to work again. He can't sit on his laurels and believe that his name is going to get him the big fights. And then you just kind of got to look at the landscape at 160. I don't know what's going on with Triple G, if he's retired or not. but I think he's trying to keep himself open for bigger fights. And then you've also got Jaime Munguia. That might be a good fight for Charlo Janabek. I just don't know if they would put McGee in there with any real killers. What do y'all think? So, sipping on a Bloody Mary, snacking a little bit because it's Sunday. It's a chill day, right? But anyway, that's my comments on 160. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Showtime card. And this one was headlined by none other than Rolando Rolly Romero. And this is this played out in a very interesting way. On the televised portion of the card, because I didn't get to watch it before the bell, you had Batir Akhmadov versus Kenneth Sims Jr. Let Charlo prove something? Yeah, for sure. I think he definitely needs to get in there with a live dog and show that he still got something left. I mean, he's still only 32. He should have plenty left, even for a middleweight. He don't have that many fights. So he should definitely get back in there and get his work in. But so first up, you have Batir Akhmadov at Kenneth Sims, and this was his WBA super lightweight title eliminator. So the title fight that was a headline for this card, this is basically setting up their next opponent. And what's going to be really important for this particular fight was that Kenneth Sims already has 2 losses. So when you're at this point in your career, you've got to start to figure some things out and put the pieces of the puzzle together. And he says he's been on a little bit of a win streak. So he's trying to get himself in a positive light. And it starts with this eliminator. Akhmadov is a very game opponent. And when I say this fight was rock'em sock'em, these dudes fought in the pocket, and you could tell neither one of them came to play. Now, something that I thought was a little off-putting was that there was a point in the fight where it was like second round, Sims switched to southpaw, and Akhmadov is a natural southpaw. It was really crazy that Sims had that advantage when they closed the stance, but yet and still he kept switching back and forth, orthodox to southpaw. And it was like, you're kicking his ass when you're a southpaw. Just stay in closed stance because Akhmadov has no game plan. And I just couldn't figure out why. I could not figure out why he would not stay in that stance and kick his opponent's ass. He put himself in a lot of 50-50 situations, and he really just sat there and made it a tougher fight than need be. It was so competitive at one point that he was taking a lot of shots to the right eye. It closed his eye. He closed his eye. He was taking these backhand, left hands to the right eye when he was in the southpaw stance. And it's like his biggest issue was his defense wasn't there. He was just sitting there kind of just taking shots that were unnecessary. Eventually, he dogged out a win. They gave him a majority decision. One judge saw the draw. I tended to agree. I kind of had the draw because I felt like Sims gave away a lot of rounds. On the other hand, I could understand that one judge had it 115, 113, and then the other judge had it 116, 112. Now, the problem with the 116, 112 is that I don't believe it was that kind of competitive. It just wasn't there for me. I mean, I thought it was more competitive than that. Excuse me. I felt like it was a draw overall. Both guys came to fight. Both guys really put their foot on the gas. Sims made it tougher than need be, but I thought that any opportunities he left on the table for Akhmadov, he took advantage of it. A lot of times Sims would back himself to the ropes, and he was taking shots to the chin and face that was just unnecessary, and he made this fight more of a dog fight than it absolutely needed to be. So if he's going to compete at the highest level at 140 pounds and he's going to challenge for this title at 140 pounds, he's going to need to not put himself in the position where it's like, okay, you have a you have an advantage over the opponent. Take advantage of everything that's in your arsenal. You have better hand speed, your footwork is better. In the close stance, your opponent has no defense for your backhand, so your left is landing at will. You're able to throw a check hook and pivot. Use these things and keep yourself in the plus territory instead of sitting there in 50-50s and staying in harm's way unnecessarily. Mr. Vegas, salute, welcome. I seen you was over there at AM Sports Media. Now you're here at the Mike Check Podcast. Thank y'all for joining. We are talking about the fight cards. We've already covered the Janet Beck card on Top Rank. However, if y'all are interested, we could recap some of that if you just put your comments and questions down there. Lefty, what up, though? Bonton South Deep Boxing. Use your advantages and don't give them up. Exactly. And that's what happened in the Kenneth Sims fight. I saw where Sims was he had an advantage, and then he would just turn his body and just get right back into that orthodox stance, and then he would start getting tagged. Now, at the point where I saw his right eye closing, where you're in the southpaw stance, obviously your right eye is more exposed to a right-handed person, but he was facing the southpaw. He could have stayed in that stance and still survived. That would have been a really good strategy for him to finish out the fight and actually cruise and maybe pick up some rounds that I felt like he gave away to his opponent. Now, next up, we had Rancis Bartholomew and Omar Juarez. And I don't know about y'all, and let me know if you watched this fight, but this was a real sleepy fight to me. I didn't feel like either fighter came in with the right game plan for their opponent, and it was hard to kind of find some separation. Bonton says basically use your advantages and don't get them up to your opponent is what you're saying, which I agree for sure. Brandon House, what up though? Welcome back, fam. I just felt like with Sims, just to put a bookmark on that, with Sims, he put himself in a bad situation by standing there in 50-50s when he could have just used his footwork and used his elite hand speed over his opponent to actually get an easy win. He just made the tougher fight than need be, and now he's going to have to sit out because he's got that eye injury, and we're going to address what this means later after we talk about the Rolly Romero fight. All right, so next up, you get into Rancis Bartholomew and Omar Juarez, and I'm glad I didn't bet on this fight because it was much closer than it should have been, because I thought that Juarez was going to be better, and it seemed like he trained, he was in shape, he can box. He just didn't have the right strategy for the opponent in front of him. And a lot of times you'll see that in fights where you can't figure out why one fighter is not doing anything that is putting them in plus territory, meaning it's not giving them any advantages over the opponent. And that's what happened with Juarez. I just thought he could have done a lot better job of kind of taking advantage of some flaws in Bartholomew's game, especially a guy coming off a loss. So the win goes to Bartholomew, so he keeps himself in the 140-pound conversation, even coming off a loss to Gary Antoine Russell. Next up, let's talk about this main event, and then we could talk about some general boxing topics before we get out of here. So you had Rolando Romero versus Ismael Barroso. So Rolly is coming off a loss. Barroso has like 22 knockouts and 26 fights, something crazy like that. So you got two power punches going in toe-to-toe. Now, regardless of what you believe about Rolly Romero, if he deserved to be in a championship fight, I'm not here to debate that because there's nothing we could do about that part of boxing. But what we can talk about is how the fight played out. From my perspective, Ismael was very game. He had a very good game plan. Apply pressure to Rolly and force him to be some type of counterpuncher. The thing with Rolly Romero is he's used to being a front foot power puncher. So when you put him in a situation for something he's never trained for, obviously, you're going to make him do things that are uncharacteristic. I've never seen Rolly on his bike. I've always seen him stand in the pocket, willing to go 50-50 with people. But a powerful puncher like Ismael Barroso actually had him moving around, and Rolly was just losing rounds. I think he was real competitive in the second round, but that was about it. For the most part, he was just getting his ass kicked, round after round after round. And then late in the fight, he finally catches his opponent with a good solid punch, and it stunned him. But Barroso quickly recovered and he started to fight on and continued to fight back. And then Rolly caught him in the corner and he hit him with a couple punches, and one was more of a push than punch. He kind of slapped the jab out there and then he pushed Barroso down, who was a little off balance. And this was counted as a knockdown, not understanding what Tony Weeks was seeing. All right. So then within that same round, you start to see Rolly start to try to be aggressive. He felt like his opponent was hurt. So it's like, okay, I could do some damage. Round ends, they come out the next round. Rolly's on his, on the gas pedal. He's trying to get this fight over. And he's throwing these wild punches. He's missing a lot. But Barroso's remaining controlled, composed. Remember, he's 40 years old. He's been there before. And he's giving good shots back. He's counterpunching in an accurate way. And he's making Rolly really think about what he's doing. But instead of maybe slowing his punches down or just varying the tempo, he's throwing for the fences. And he finally catches Barroso, but it's not a clean punch. And it's kind of a push. Barroso kind of weaves a little bit, throws a punch of his own. And in the exchange that ends this fight, Barroso actually ended more effective and clean punches than Rolly. But Tony Weeks, the referee, steps in, stops the fight. And I'm on Twitter. I'm in the live stream. I'm like, what the fuck? Because there's no reason this fight should have been stopped in that moment. Now, after the fact, I kind of thought about it. If you think about David Morrell's last fight before the Tank card, he was in there with the guy. I can't remember his first name, but it was Irbaselli. And this guy ended up having to go into a medically induced coma because the fight didn't get stopped early enough. He was getting beat on, and it should have been stopped a round or two earlier, but it wasn't. And Tony Weeks was the referee. So in my opinion, I think that maybe that was lingering in the back of his mind, and he would rather pull the trigger too early than too late and have another fighter hospitalized. And then keep in mind, this is an older fighter. This guy's 40. The amount of punishment you can take at that age is not the same. If that dude was 22, 23, he might have let him get beat down and go out on his shield. But I think given the age and given several other factors, that's more than likely why he didn't stop the fight. So unfortunately, I believe it was an early stoppage, and now Rolly Romero is a champion at 140 pounds. So you guys in the comments, let's go ahead and get this conversation going. What do y'all think about this? Was this stoppage too early? What do you think? Do you feel like this was a fixed situation? I personally don't feel like it was fixed. I don't always think like that about professional sports. I like to believe that sometimes things just don't go the way that we expect because of extenuating circumstances. I think that this was just a matter of maybe Tony Weeks wasn't ready to come back and ref a fight, given that he might have been a little trigger happy. Like maybe he needed to be fighting. Maybe he needed to be reffing some lower level stuff just to get back comfortable with seeing hand-to-hand combat and seeing guys get rocked and kind of getting his bearings back about him. Cool JC says, Grandpa was robbed. Man, he do look old, huh? Somebody said Barroso looked like a catcher's mitt. Just worn and beat up. Like, damn, that's messed up. Bonton says, I think due to the punches that landed at the time of the stoppage indicated to me that this was a bad stoppage. Right. Barroso was he was giving something back. And I thought that in the exchange that ended the fight, he landed some good shots on Rolly, but it didn't stop Rolly from coming forward. But they were clean and they were accurate punches. He wasn't defending necessarily because he was on offense as well. This was a phone booth 50-50 situation. And I thought that he was even weaving a little bit. Now, whether it was muscle memory or he was conscious, it's hard to say. But I do believe that he was trying to be competitive even when he was kind of pinned in the corner. Something that we can't really say that the ref might have seen is sometimes when somebody gets hit, you can see their eyes roll a little bit, or they'll bug, or they'll start to blinking. There may have been something in the fighter's eyes that there was one clean punch wrapped around the two pushes that Rolly had in that last sequence. That one clean punch right on the chin. From the angle over Rolly's shoulder, it doesn't look like a tough shot. It looks like a glancing blow. But when you watch it in slow-mo, it looked like it made good contact, and it was right on the chin. And maybe that punch is the one that made Tony Weeks feel like, okay, I need to stop this before it gets ugly. Because you don't want two hospitalized fighters on your resume in back-to-back fights. So when you talk about career decisions, making a business decision, in my opinion, I believe that that's what happened. Um, but I don't like the stoppage nonetheless. I think that these boxers know what they signed up for. They signed paperwork accepting responsibility for any actions that take place in the ring, and that to me is why I think that sometimes you gotta let them fight. Bonton says Rolly hit him on the shoulder, then Weeks jumped in and stopped the fight. Right. So there was a push just at the collarbone, a push punch that Rolly threw, and it pinned Ishmael in the corner. Then he followed up with a left that clipped him on the chin, and it staggered Ishmael to the corner, like it staggered him back to his left. I'm sorry, to his right. And then Rolly came back with another punch that kind of hit him in the shoulder and pushed him back again. In the meantime, Ishmael's trying to weave, and he threw two punches during that sequence, both landing. Maybe his view was obscured. I'm not going to make excuses for Weeks. I just believe that particular situation played out the way it did because I believe in the back of his mind he was gun shy about letting him go out on his shield because he just didn't want two hospitalized fighters on his resume. So let's talk about what this means for 140 pounds, specifically for Rolly and Kenneth Sims. So Kenneth Sims just fought a 140-pound eliminator, and Rolly just obviously won a title because they have a champion in recess, Alberto Pollo. All right, so ideally, this person who just fought the eliminator, he paid the fees because a title eliminator, I believe he paid some type of sanctioning fee, like as if it's a title fight. So Sims has paid this. So now I believe he's due and deserved of a title shot to face Rolly Romero. And they're both on the same time schedule because they were on the same card. So in 3 months or whatever, maybe 4 months, because the athletic commission is definitely going to suspend Sims because of that eye injury. So maybe they're going to fight sometime around maybe, I don't know, September. And I think that Sims can beat Rolly because he's shown that he has a chin. He's shown that he's a better boxer. And I think he'll be more likely to stay on his bike and move around and use lateral movement, pivots, and footwork to stay away from Rolly and force him into some slick punches and eventually win a decision as long as he can survive. So I think that this sets up a good PBC side of the street for 140. You've got the other 140-pound title. Who you got? You got Josh Taylor. That's top rank. That's the WBO. You got the WBC with Regis. That's Queensbury. Not Queensbury. That's Matchroom. And then I think there's another Matthias. He has the other 140-pound title, and he's over there. He's going to Matchroom. So right now for Sims, he's on the WBA track. I think he needs to just start prepping and get ready for Rolly Romero. What do you guys think about that potential matchup? And then we'll talk about the fights in this upcoming week. Let's see. I'm getting the schedule up for next weekend's boxing. There's boxing actually on Wednesday, but who's actually going to watch that? Okay, so I think personally we're going to see 140 start to heat up because you're getting some new faces into the division, potentially seeing Devin Haney in the near future. Obviously, Ryan Garcia says he's moving up to 140, so we'll see how that goes. Before we move on, Bonton says, I think a lot of people was looking at Rolly, was losing the fight, and if the fight go to distance, he would have lost, and the stoppage would have been good or bad, depending on who you ask. Agreed. I thought it was a bad stoppage. I did have Rolly losing as well, but I'm a fan of boxing and not of the fighter 99% of the time. There's a couple fighters I prefer. Obviously, I prefer Gervonta Davis, Earl Spence. I like Stephen Fulton, Deontay Wilder. There's just certain fighters I like. I like Alexander Usyk as well, and I really like Bivol. But that doesn't really change who I expect to win based on what they're doing in the ring from a strategy standpoint. But I do agree with your comment there. So let's move on and talk about next weekend's card, and then I'm going to get up out of here and wrap it in about 10 minutes. We've got Katie Taylor against Chantel Cameron. This is a overseas card, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. You got Terry Harper versus Cecilia Brækhus. And then I'm trying to see if there's any notable guys on the card. Nope, mostly women. So I'm picking Katie Taylor in that one. This is a 10-round fight for the undisputed championship at junior welterweight. So it should be a good scrap. Um, I just Katie Taylor's neck is too thick for her to lose to another woman, so that's probably why I'm picking her. But I do think that she might start to fade towards the end of her career and not be as enthused about fighting these fights. So it may go that way. I don't think this is the fight though. Terry Harper, Cecilia Breakers. This is another 10-round fight. This is junior middleweight. And this is for a belt for the WBA. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the card that everybody's going to be looking forward to, though, is Devin Haney versus Vasyl Lomachenko. So I want you all to use the comment section to let me know what you think about this fight. So if you're Haney, we're going to do ones. And if you're Loma, we're going to do twos. So I want to get your votes. That didn't work out right. Let's do this again. There we go. All right. So Haney is 1, Loma is 2. So this is going to be for your 135-pound undisputed championship. This is going to be on Top Rank pay-per-view. And this is big news. The biggest thing about this is we can for sure say we're seeing some of the best, and whoever wins this fight is going to be the number 1 or 2 lightweight fighter. When you had the undisputed fight where Devin Haney took the belts from George Kambosos, to me, it didn't tell me that the very best fighter or one of the very best had become undisputed, because I didn't feel like Kambosos was that good to begin with. I thought he caught T.O. on the right day, in the right situation, and he was able to steal the belts. And that's why Haney beat his ass twice. Bonton says Devin Haney by decision, but you can't count Lomachenko out in this fight. 100% agree, sir. I've started to drift back towards the middle. I'm not at 50-50. I'm still 60-40 Haney. But given our last week's live stream and some influence and input from some friends of mine, I have looked at what they have offered as evidence that Haney might have more struggles than I expected. So that makes me believe that Loma has a better chance. Now, I do want to address this comment because I thought it was a good comment before we get deeper into this particular subject. I like to cover this. Bonton says, I do agree that the safety of the fight is more important, because when I listen to Shane Mosley talk today, it's obvious boxing has affected his speech. Hey, man, listen to Shane Mosley. Listen to, I'm drawing a blank. Tommy Hearns. Listen to him. Sugar Ray is there. So I tend to agree with you that boxer safety is important, especially when you have an older fighter. Just the way that the body works and the anatomy and recovery time is just different. But anyway, so, and this is our closing topic, obviously, but so I have had friends and affiliates and associates explain to me why Loma is better than I thought, because against Jermaine Ortiz, it just looked like an old fighter to me who caught up with a guy who ran out of gas late. So I don't think that's going to happen. Now, they point out to me that Devin Haney actually runs out of gas, and he's not as effective with his punches. He's kind of just arm punching. He starts to lose his form. He loses his defensive responsibility, and that's when bad things happen. So you can see that Loma will have some opportunities later. Now, what throws me is, and this is in the comments of some of our videos, people are telling me that Loma's going to get the knockout. Now, do y'all really believe that that's possible? And Brian S. chime in for me. Explain to us how Loma is going to get this knockout, because I don't see that. I just don't see it. Simply because when was the last knockout in Loma's career? Matter of fact, let's pull up his box rec. And I want to find out when the last time Loma had a knockout of a high-level fighter. Nath, what's good, bro? Welcome to the show. We are wrapping up, man. But thank you for tapping in. Don't forget to hit that like button. Support the channel. Feel free to do that. All right, so Loma, I'm looking at his box rec, and his last His last KO was a TKO against Nakatani in 2021 in June. So it's been almost 2 years. And we talking about Nakatani. Comey with the distance, Ortiz with the distance, T.O. went the distance, Luke Campbell, Pedraza, Linares was a TKO in the 10th round. And then Regendow retired in the 6th. I want to hear that breakdown too. Right. Like, I want to know how that knockout is going to come. Nate says people think Loma gonna KO Devin. Yeah, I've just been hearing that as of late. That's not something that's been a comment I was hearing like 2 months ago. I definitely didn't hear it after the Ortiz fight. But in the last 2 weeks, I'm getting comments and commentary saying that Loma's gonna KO Devin. And I'm like, well, what did y'all see that made y'all feel like the KO? Like, I'm just now leaning to potential decision favoring Loma. But a KO just sounds crazy to me because I just don't see the path to that. What are you going to do to Devin to get past the length of his jab, his high level IQ, which I believe is very strong with him? What are you going to do to surpass that and actually get him to basically concede to a knockout? Because that's the only way. Devin has to give up something he does good, which is keep you at range, turn you if he needs to, clinch you when he wants to. How are you going to get that knockout? Because he's not going to stand there and fight in the pocket because he knows he's not very good at that. So where is it going to come from? Bonton, you read my mind, bro. Exactly. Devin's footwork is going to allow him to stay out of the way. He can pivot. If he does get inside and find himself in trouble, he can clinch or push off and make distance. And that's going to keep him from getting hurt by Loma. And it's going to keep him from having to exchange those 50-50s. Devin Haney holding on the inside, making Loma reset. Yeah, so here's the issue with that, though. I think Loma's really good at breaking the clinch. So I don't know how effective. Like, it's not going to be like against Kambosos where Haney was able to stab, shift forward, clinch, turn him, and then force him to reset. That's kind of hard for me to see happen in the Loma because he's not going to allow the clinch to happen. All right, I think Loma isn't going to be able to get close. I can see it. Yeah, I can't see it. Okay. So, and that's the part of it. Like, Devin's not going to allow this to be an inside fight. He's not going to sit there and concede 50-50s just because he wants to put on the show. He wants to be undisputed. He wants to be able to leave top rank with them belts if he chooses to. So he's not going to give Loma opportunity to get off on the inside and do something that looks pretty and sway the judges. He's going to try and keep himself in a position where he's at an advantage from start to finish. And that means fighting at range, using the jab, following up with that funky little two that he throws where it's like a swivel cross, where it kind of comes from like chest height and it doesn't come from the shoulder. And it's definitely not an overhand, but it's kind of got a swing to it. I can see him setting it up with a jab and getting Loma to step into it by pushing the jab to the right side of Loma's face, which is going to make him lean to the left or even step to the left, which walks him right into that two that's going to come from that awkward angle. That's the punch that's going to be important throughout this fight to me. What do you guys see as a particular strategy that Loma can use to offset that particular punch? Because for me, it's a slip to the right instead of the left. Bonton says Devin Haney can be disciplined enough to do just enough to win. Lomachenko have to be able to adjust and make Devin do something different. Exactly. So it's a matter of, I'm going to take you out of your game plan and force you to be the fighter I want you to be versus the fighter that you came in here prepared to be. That's going to be the most important thing to make it happen. That's just my opinion, though. Obviously, everybody is going to have their different view on it. I can't see Loma forcing Devin to change his game plan to the point that Devin is at a disadvantage, because at all costs, I think he's going to try and keep Loma at range. He's going to try and keep him at the end of his stick and make him really understand, like, no, I'm not giving you this opportunity to get me off my square and make me do what you think is going to put you at an advantage. It's just not going to work that way. So let me see. Yeah. So ultimately, I'm still leaning Haney. I got a little bit more study to do. I'm gonna put out a final prediction video. I'll be reacting to some of the stuff going on during the week, the press conference, the weigh-in. But I'm definitely gonna put out a prediction video probably Friday after the weigh-in. I gotta see Devin on the scale. So before I get out of here, let's talk about that. Do you all think that Devin's gonna comfortably make weight, or is he gonna look like a skeleton again? Because if he looks like a skeleton to me, I feel like it's gonna be a issue. It's gonna be a major issue because Devin doesn't have the comfort level to kind of sort of like be drained and still beat Loma, because Loma is a high level fighter. You can't go in there taking them light and you know your weight is all messed up. So that's going to be an important element in my opinion. All right. Bonton says that would be very important to how Devin look on the scale for sure. And I mean, it seems like you and I align a lot with what we're looking for leading into fights. And sometimes I bet on the fights. And a lot of what happens, I watch the weigh-ins and press conferences because I'm looking at body language and I'm looking at specific things that let me know where a fighter's head is and where his physical and his mental are together. And that's really important. So I'm gonna be looking for that, and then I'll do my prediction video after, and I'll probably even put out some betting advice for guys that might be looking to put some money down on the cards this weekend. So I'm gonna wrap it up right there. Like I said, I wasn't gonna do more than an hour anyway. So just wanted to tap in with you guys. This is Mother's Day, so I'm gonna let everybody get back to their families just like I'm gonna do. But I appreciate you all tapping in and rocking with the Mic Check podcast. Don't forget to like on your way out, hit that subscribe button. This has been T. Until the next time, I am out. Peace.